Good morning. Welcome to Big Bets on Campus Live. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, is our college football betting connoisseur, Collin Wilson. Just you and I today, brother. Brett McMurphy had family plans. He will be back with us next week. Before we get rolling here, I do want to remind everyone you can find all of our picks, data, and lots of actionable content for today's slate on the award-winning Action Network app. Collin, you ready to get rolling here?
I am. We're going to miss out on Boom McMurphy. I know that this was the week for him, but we're going to start off by talking about one game that's on the board that I think has a lot of interest because it has one of the highest ticket counts, and that is Baylor and Kansas State. When Stuckey and I podcasted on Thursday, this number was hanging around Kansas State +1, Kansas State on the money line. Now that number has come up to 2.5 at a couple books, and taken down immediately by people that wanted to back Baylor. And I think it's pretty easy, like you and I said on the podcast, that, Baylor is a team that hasn't done anything on the road whatsoever. They've covered one game away. Kansas State rush defense is going to be great against Bohannon and Abram Smith. So, this is a game that has got Kansas State written all over, in a great spot when Baylor just beat OU last week.
Yeah, Baylor has laid an egg after their two biggest wins of the season. And as you said, their only two road wins on the season for the season are Kansas and Texas State. That's pretty ugly. Give me your confidence level 1 to 100 on your Hogs pulling off a stunner today against Alabama.
Well, you said one was the floor, considering there's a 50 burger in our forecast for the Razorbacks every time that we play Nick Saban. Usually Saban will put that up. So I have about a 1% chance that we'll win, and I have about a 5% chance feeling that we'll cover that number. Pittman's looking forward to that $250,000 bonus when he beats Missouri, not Alabama.
There you have it. Roll Tide. All right, let's get into our best bets for today. Before we do, let's take a glance at the leaderboard. Collin, you still maintain your lead over myself and Mr. Boom or Bust McMurphy. I'll start off with my best bet of the day. I hope it goes better than last week's Tulane, which lost in excruciating fashion in overtime after a 25-yard missed field goal. But I'm going with the UAB Blazers +4.5. I think the line might be down to +4. Still like it there on the road against UTSA. If you take a look at this UTSA team, yes, they're 10-0. They're ranked 22nd in the college football playoff. It's been a great season for the Roadrunners. But look, they've had their only two really good wins came in pretty fortunate fashion over Memphis and Western Kentucky. The rest of their schedule is ugly. And this is when I look at both of these teams, I think the weakest unit by far is the UTSA secondary. That's something that I think Dylan Hopkins could take advantage of for UAB. And yes, the UTSA run defense has been excellent all year, but they haven't really faced a good rushing offense. They will today. I think this line is way too high based on what UTSA has done against a really, really soft schedule. So give me the Blazers with the division title on the line. I think this game is closer to a coin flip. Collin, where are you going?
Well, I want to say, if you're holding big Western Kentucky futures, which if you've been listening to Stuckey and I since we started podcasting way earlier this year, and you are waiting for Western Kentucky to win this conference championship, You want UTSA to win this game because that secondary is not good whatsoever. So, we'll see what happens with UAB. If UAB beats them, it's a different story. I'm going to stay in Conference USA. It's all Conference USA show. I'm going to take Florida Atlantic plus 10.5. We talked a little bit about it on the podcast, but this game could be meaningless to our beloved Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. With Marshall on deck next week, the game against Florida Atlantic today may have no bearing on Conference USA East. But who does care about this game? Florida Atlantic head coach Willie Taggart. He is a former Hilltopper head coach. He is a former Hilltopper alumni. He's a former Hilltopper quarterback. So nobody cares about this game more than the head coach of Florida Atlantic. The Owls have the goods to limit Bailey Zappi. We do not want to disparage our favorite player in college football, Bailey Zappi, but the Florida Atlantic defense is 7th in pass coverage. They're top 20 in passing success rate. And when you go to the other side of the ball, Western Kentucky's had problems with teams that can rush it. You think about Army just going up and down the field against them. And that's what Johnny Ford can do for Florida Atlantic. Teams that run the ball give Western Kentucky big problems. Give me the Fighting Taggarts going into his old stopping grounds when he was a quarterback and a head coach. Give me all those points at 10.5. Owls cover today.
I hope that Zappy hour doesn't cause you to drink excessively today, and you're able to tweet out some owl gifts. Camp at Temple this year, so we haven't been able to do that this year. All right, we still have our round robin underdog parlay to get to, but first let's get to our first two marquee games of the day. We'll start off in the Big Ten with Ohio State and Michigan State. This is the top 10 matchup, but if you look at the spread, you wouldn't be able to tell. Ohio State is a 19-point favorite. Total is sitting at, looks like 68.5. Collin, where are you going here?
Yeah, I'm going to take the first half over in this game. It is a game that they've been taking a lot of Ohio State and over money this morning, but I'm going to take the over here in the first half because Mel Tucker came out and he said, I don't want any part of being in a boat race. But the problem is for the $100 million coach who's at his destination job, the boat race is coming to him. Michigan State is built on the explosive play, both sides of the ball. That's good and bad. The good being that the Spartans are top 10 in big play percentage. That's how many runs over 12 yards, how many passes over 20 yards divided by number of plays. And that's going to work great against an Ohio State defense that's outside the top 60 against pass and 86th in defending standard downs explosiveness. And you say, well, what is that? 1st and 10, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 4. Ohio State's been terrible at allowing huge plays. That screams Kenneth Walker. That screams Peyton Thorne, and we'll see with Jaden Reed today. Naylor may still be out. And the Ohio State offense is just an absolute machine right now. 2nd in stuff rate if they want to run with Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson. They're 4th in standard downs explosiveness, which means they have the same thing. In early downs, they can go crazy. And that's bad against Michigan State, who I said explosiveness is their game. They're terrible on defense at defending the explosive play. They're really bad at defending the pass. Ohio State is going to make this a boat race early. Give me the first half over points.
Yeah, I laid 19 here with Ohio State. I just don't see any way that this Michigan State secondary, which plays so soft due to their deficiencies in the defensive backfield, there's any way that they can slow down Ohio State's offense, which is just humming right now. And they have 3 excellent receivers, the best receiving group in the country going up against a really poor secondary. It spells disaster for Michigan State here. A Michigan State team, I think, is just completely overrated in the market. I mean, they should have lost to Nebraska. They should have lost to Michigan down 30-14 in that game. Could have lost to Indiana and their backup quarterback. So this is a team that's been quite fortunate. I worry a little bit about the back door, but if Mel Tucker wants to run Kenneth Walker, and I'm sure they're going to try to use him a lot, the strength of the Ohio State defense is their run D. And, Michigan State, as you mentioned, Naylor, offensive line has some injuries. So I think Ohio State, you mentioned a 50 burger with Alabama. I think they get to 50 here and cover this number more times than not. If you had to go one side or another, would you side with Ohio State?
My numbers make this 14.5, but at the same time, there's teams like Ohio State this year, Alabama last year, LSU in 2019, where you pull back from the spreadsheet because what they're doing in their recent games far outweighs what you can build in a spreadsheet. So from a numbers perspective, it's too high, but at the same time, I'm not going to go against Ohio State. So, I would play Ohio State if it live got to 17. So, but if I had to make a pick, if I was in some sort of survivor contest, I'd probably take Ohio State.
All right, let's move on to the Big 12 and go to Iowa State and Oklahoma. Oklahoma is now down to, I think, a 3.5 point favorite, over under 58.5. This game has lost a lot of its juice. I mean, if you told me before the year started what would be on the line here, I would think a lot more. I guess Oklahoma still has a chance to get to the college football playoff, but it's not looking great after their loss last week. Where are you going here, Boomer Sooner or the Cyclones?
Well, speaking of Matt Campbell, who may be on his way to the Big Ten to be a head coach, let's keep in mind that he has not struggled against Oklahoma whatsoever. He's not struggled against Lincoln Riley or defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. Iowa State won this game in the regular season last year with no problems. Then they went up against a red-hot Oklahoma team in the Big 12 championship, but they had 3 turnovers in the game, which cost them the Big 12 championship. They'd be Big 12 champions right now. And Caleb Williams struggled last week. I know he got his hand stepped on, but he struggled against Baylor's defense that showed a 3-3-5 front, disguised their coverage, disguised where the pressure is going to come from. Now they get an Iowa State team that runs exclusively 3-3-5 and gets pressure with just 3 defenders. That's a problem for Caleb Williams and an Oklahoma team that's having problems scoring points. As for the Iowa State offense, this is where they've given Alex Grinch in Oklahoma lots of problems. They like to line up in single tight end, double tight end, triple tight end. They will run a whole number of formations today, lots of pre-snap motion, 3 different schemes with tight ends. And that's going to be a problem for the Sooners defense to figure out, who's just giving up, just getting gashed by everybody these days. And that is pointed out by the Sooners being 125th in standard downs explosiveness. I mentioned that Ohio State and Michigan State are giving up big plays on early downs. Oklahoma is the worst. So, I think Iowa State beats them in early downs. They keep the chains moving. The Cyclones put an end to the Sooners' bid for the college football playoff today.
Yeah, I agree here. I mean, Matt Campbell as a dog is always intriguing. And look, Oklahoma, we just have to, they are who they are. All those close wins are, they lost to Baylor. There's a lot of problems on this defense. Look, if I look at all these units grade out, you have 2 elite offenses, 2 disappointing defenses, but Oklahoma's defense is just beyond bad, especially compared to Iowa State. And I'm more worried about Caleb Williams after last week than I am with Brock Purdy. You know what you're going to get with this Iowa State offense. Caleb Williams didn't face the greatest competition, kind of struggled against Kansas, struggled last week. So I'm not even sure what you're going to get from him. But I assume Oklahoma will move the ball. But I think the Iowa State defense is the difference here. I have Iowa State power rated higher than Oklahoma. I make this game close to a coin flip. And look, Iowa State, yes, they have a lot of losses, but they've been fluky, right? They lost to Baylor. They outgained them by 200 yards. There's a kick return touchdown. Same thing with Iowa with the turnovers. They lost last week on a 62-yard field goal. Bad officiating in West Virginia. I think Iowa State gets this done. I completely agree with you. All right, let's move on to our round robin moneyline parlay. I think I'm feeling good about this week. We want to try to hit one of these a year. Lead us off with the anchor.
Yeah, we're going to start off with Kansas State. We said at the top of the show that this is a team that has a great rush defense. They can handle the Bears, and the Bears are terrible on the road. Give me Chris Kleiman at coach on a revenge game after they lost by 1 point in Waco last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Bohannon is deteriorating. Well, he's regressing. He had great numbers early in the year, 9 touchdowns, no picks against subpar competition. 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions his last 4 games. I agree there. I'm going with UAB. Already talked about that game earlier, so let's slot the Blazers in here. Where are you going next?
Wyoming. Odds makers have not been able to catch up to this team the last 2 weeks. They're winning outright as an underdog. Now they get a Utah State team that is heavy on the pass with Logan Bonner, and Wyoming secondary is one of the best in the nation. Craig Bowl gets bowl eligible today.
I'm going to throw in Wake Forest here. This line is crazy to me. I'm going to trust Sam Hartman. The Clemson offense is completely broken. 30% success rate against UConn last week. They just can't move the ball. Now they're decimated at the wide receiver position. I know the Wake defense is bad, but I think they're going to have a really good shot to win this game. Give me Wake Forest. Where are you going next?
Well, the big question on everybody's mind is what's up with Cincinnati? But what we do know about SMU is that they had a couple weeks where they weren't really executing on offense. That's because it's an air raid offense. When you have an air raid offense, you have to be in sync. SMU showed up last week and finally showed that those wide receivers are in sync with Tanner Mordecai. They're going to give Cincinnati a challenge and beat them today. Number 5 team in the college football playoff is going to go down.
All right, for my last pick of the round robin, I'm going to go with Navy against East Carolina. Great spot for Navy. You're off the bye, catching East Carolina coming off of a huge emotional overtime win against Memphis. They got bowl eligible for the first time since 2014. You just talked about Cincinnati. They host them on Friday night and end their season. So, I mean, this is just a terrible spot for ECU. I think Navy should be able to move the ball on the ground. And if you dig a little deeper into ECU's resume, it's pretty poor. Give me the mids here at home.
Let's go big. We haven't done one this big on the Big Bets on Campus live show all season. I had to have our producers dust off the graphic. Let's take Kansas on the money line, a 9-1 shot, 21-point underdogs to TCU. Yes, TCU did get a big win 2 weeks ago when they fired head coach Gary Patterson, but then they turned around and had their old ways against Oklahoma State last week. Oklahoma State, who can't score any points, put 63 up against TCU last week. Nothing's changed with the Horned Frogs. They may be done for the season. On the flip side, Kansas, Lance Leipold is a wonderful head coach. He did amazing things at Buffalo with no talent whatsoever, and he beat Texas last week. That's going to continue because you are a reflection of your head coach, and Kansas has a good one. They're going to win today.
Wow. That's a bold call. I was feeling good about this until you threw Kansas up there. I do remember back in the day, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, for like every year we would just bet Kansas against TCU because they would either win or the games would be really close. So hopefully we can get some of that magic. And you're right, TCU might be checked out. All right, so that does it for our round robin parlay. We do have 2 more marquee games to get to. Let's go back to the Big Ten. Wisconsin has been rolling teams of late. Braylon Allen has been amazing at running back. They are 9.5 point favorites today against Nebraska. Total sitting at around 43. Where are you going here?
Yeah, I'm going to take an over 43 here. Ticked up at a couple of books. I don't think that's coming back down. I hesitated all week because I wanted a key of 41. And that's not going to happen. The Badgers defense is number 1 across the board, but you have to look at the offenses of quarterbacks that they've faced. Spencer Petras, Aiden O'Connell, Jack Cohn. These players have cinder blocks for legs, right? And digging back into the 2019 and 2018 box scores, Adrian Martinez is the biggest weapon for Nebraska in this game. He's been able on designed runs and in scramble attempts. He's been able to score touchdowns against Wisconsin in the past and against everybody this season. And despite the Wisconsin D being great at everything, and we know that they're 46th against the explosive run. So that tells me that, Martinez is not going to be able to just bust one. He's probably going to bust a couple touchdowns today. And when you go on the Badgers side of the offense, Stuckey mentioned it. They're just boat racing teams the last 2 games, 52 on Rutgers, 35 on Northwestern. And people will say, well, Nebraska has a great defense. Nebraska has a great pass coverage defense. Nebraska has a great back 7. But when you look at what they are up at the front line, they're 81st in defensive stuff rate. So Corn is going to give, Braylon Allen all that he wants, a guy that is just carrying people down the field with yards after contact. I think Wisconsin's going to get their scores. I think Nebraska is going to get their explosive plays from Adrian Martinez. I'm going to go over 43.
Yeah, I agree on Adrian Martinez. Like that type of mobile quarterback, that's who can throw off this really disciplined Wisconsin defense. And he did it in his first 2 meetings against Wisconsin. I think he had 422 yards of total offense on his own as a freshman. So I think his legs can be a big weapon here. They can hit some explosive plays. You're not going to sustain drives. You're not going to run the ball against Wisconsin. So you can throw that out the window. But I actually disagree a bit. I don't hate the over, but I disagree a bit on Nebraska's run defense. They can load the box here, and they've shown that they can just completely shut down great rushing attacks. They did it against Kenneth Walker. They did it against Trevion Henderson. So I think that their front 7, which has a lot of talent, especially at linebacker, can step up here. Nebraska, you don't want to back them as a favorite. They make too many mistakes. But as an underdog, they're great. This might be the best 3-7 team we've ever seen. They're 4-0 against the spread as an underdog this year. I've been on them all 4 times. I'm going to back them again here. All 4 of those teams, by the way, they are ranked at the top 13 in the college football playoff. They lost all 4 games by 1 possession. All 7 of their losses this year have been by 1 possession. They had a chance to win all 4 of those games as well. Give me that sweet, sweet Corn. Again, this team that's treated me very well this year. They're off a bye here with a new, a lot of offensive staff changes. So that mystery, they might have a few wrinkles in here that Wisconsin doesn't have on tape. I think that can work to their advantage. You hope that they don't have it checked out at 3-7, but I think you'll get a game effort out of the Huskers here. All right, we have one final game to get to, maybe the game of the weekend in the Pac-12. A lot of people with college football playoff futures, Pac-12 futures are interested in this one. Oregon, currently in the top 4 of the college football playoff at Utah. Utah is now out to a 3.5-point favorite. Collin, you've loved Utah all year. Are you going back to the well?
Yeah, this is a game where I project Utah -2. So this, and to be honest, this was like the most fun handicap I've had. I got to break down. There's a single game guide out there in Action Network. I'd point everybody to go read it before we get to kick later tonight. This was just a tremendous game to break down. This is a very confusing offense that the Ducks defense has to prepare for. There's going to be almost a dozen formations along with 3 different schemes that includes flea flickers, shuttle passes, not to mention Cameron Rising is the hottest quarterback in college football that people aren't talking about because he's on the West Coast. Some may say, well, there's Kayvon Thibodeau. He's going to give a whole bunch of pressure until you realize that the Utah offensive tackles, both sides, they haven't given up a sack the entire season. So if you flip to the other side, Oregon has an identity. They start slow. They possibly get down in games. And by the second quarter, the adjustments are made and then they dominate the middle 8. And then they're really good in the third quarter. You go back to that UCLA game, they got down 14-0 against a Chip Kelly UCLA offense that was multiple formations, 2 running backs, a dual threat quarterback. Same thing that we got here on the road. So I expect Mario Cristobal and Joe Moorhead, 2 of the best coaches in all of FBS that can make changes on the fly, to come out and get back into this game. But as far as the first half goes, Utah has been one of the best teams in the first half. Oregon 2-7 against the spread in the first half this season. I'm going to take Utah money line. I'm going to look for Oregon live around the middle 8.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think there's a lot of value left now that this is cross 3. I do have some Utah money line. Throw them in a parlay with the Bucks money line to make it about even money if you want. I just don't. You mentioned Thibodeau and the tackles, right? And the Oregon pass rush overall hasn't been great. The run defense hasn't been great. People in Oregon are saying the defense is getting better, but I think that's just a product of the competition. But Utah runs a lot of, 13, 12, 11 person. They're going to have tight ends in there to chip them. They use their tight ends a lot. So I think that they can contain Thibodeau. They can move the ball on this Oregon defense, which I think has holes. And on the other side of the ball, I expect Utah to just load the box here. I don't trust Anthony Brown. I don't trust this wide receiving core, which is undermanned at the moment, to go on the road here against a Utah team that is just dominant at home. They haven't lost at home to anybody with fans in the stands since, I think, September of 2019 to a top 10 Washington team. I think Utah gets it done and ends Oregon's bid and the Pac-12's bid for a college football playoff berth. All right, let's take a look at what you guys said on our Twitter poll, and it looks like you are siding with Oregon and the Ducks just barely. Looking forward to that one at Rice Eccles. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As always, we'll be back with Brett McMurphy next week, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. As always, make sure you check out the Big Bets on Campus podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll have a few episodes early this week to get you ahead of the curve for the next week's slate. We have a holiday, so we'll get everything out early. And if you have anything to yell about, anything we told you that is completely wrong today, or if you want to call in and say nice things, 959 bad beat, and you can be heard on our Monday morning recap episode. Thanks for joining us. Collin, thanks for joining me. Good luck, everyone, today, and we will catch y'all later.